Hello, everyone. This is Team 10 discussing reduce inequalities again this week. Today's topic is going to be surrounding the idea on how to reduce inequalities in an organization, but more so focusing on biases in the hiring and recruitment area. So, my first question I wanted to ask everyone is how important do you all think diversity is in an organization and why?
Mm, I can start off. I think it's really important because then it shows that, like, as a person who is from a minority, it shows incentive that, like, oh, these people aren't only hiring um, based on like what a person looks like. They're open to people with actual qualifications and then like their background, and like also they don't have any bias against individuals who may look like me. So then, therefore, if I do want to apply working for a company like them, then I would be judged based on my experience and what I will bring to the company.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. It creates like a safer workspace in a way.
I would agree with what Mandy said as well. I also think like representation like matters as well. Especially at my workplace, like me and my manager were both uh like minorities, and then the main demographic of like our like clients at work are also like actually minorities. And so we actually have like the mentality to always remember like, okay, we actually have to be diverse in our hiring. Like we can't only hire people that are our ethnicities or the demographics ethnicities because of the language barriers, but like to make sure that we have like all types of ethnicities.
Nyamat, do you have anything to add?
I think her screen is
Oh,
frozen. I think not only like ethnicity and like visible minorities, but also those that aren't really visible, like people with disabilities. They're also can be judged against, and like ageism, and like there's so many different ways that you can, like, diversity doesn't only speak, I guess, like on ethnicity. I think it can also reach out to like being diverse with the type of people that you have in the workplace. So having people that may have a visible or non-visible disability being able to work there, I think that would also be considered diverse.
That's actually a really good point because when I was doing research for this topic, a lot of the diversity like biases came up were about like well race obviously and age and yeah, a lot of people with the disabilities and such, and I feel like that is definitely something that organizations should recognize. So, Naimat, we were just talking about why we think diversity is important in an organization. Do you have anything to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just thought like I totally agree with what Mandy and Isabel shared because I also believe like when I go to work, I do need the sense of belongingness there because except from the pay I'm getting, I also need the motivation to go to the work and be with the people I get along and gel along and attach some personal values also apart from professional, and diversity in a company whole creates a lot of ethics and values as well, and also it shapes your perspective towards different cultures, gives you a sense of belongingness, and motivates you in a way that you can have a different perspective of things that you never knew about. So I believe it is like plays a crucial role when it comes to including them in corporations.
I agree with you a lot, actually, especially on the multiple perspectives. I think it's really important for organizations to have a diverse team to like to solve problems because everyone thinks differently. So I think it helps organizations reach their goals in a more efficient way, but then also to have everyone be represented in an organization. Before moving on, does anybody have anything they want to add? No? Okay. I wanted to focus on diversity in the hiring and recruitment process specifically because I feel like that's where an organization can make the most change. That is the beginning journey for everyone involved in the workplace. And in order for an organization to run efficiently, you need the right people with you. Not to mention, if an organization wanted to incorporate more diversity, this would be the right place to do it. But also focusing on bias because This is where people's personal biases can be the most damaging. And from a human resource perspective, this is especially important to address if they're the ones in charge of the hiring process. So now I'll give you guys a scenario of you all being on the hiring and recruitment team of an organization. What do you guys think is an example of personal bias when looking for candidates?
Shifting through, because I am like a manager at work. And so when you look through like a site like Indeed, you get all like the different names, and like my name is Isabel Bates. I think that's a little ambiguous, you wouldn't know, but for like Mandy Sidhu, like you already know just from Mandy's name that one, she's most likely like probably female, and then two, like she's definitely Indian.
Yeah. I actually had that at like one of my prior workplaces. Like my manager would go through it and like she would look right away, then she would see like, oh, this is not a person that she wants to hire based on their name, because it was more like discrimination towards, she didn't like hiring guys because she's had bad experiences with male coworkers, or uh like them working a job, so she would tend to like to hire women or female staff instead. So if she saw like a person that was trying to apply and they were like a male, and then she'll be a little bit hesitant to actually give them a call for interview, because of the past experience. So that's like also a bias, and I think that can also be happening like vice versa, or maybe with like different ethnicities, be like, oh well, I worked with this type of person before and like this is my experience, so I don't want to like, hire a person within the same minority again.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Interesting
Yeah.
about your not hiring men.
I know it's usually the other way around, like that we hear of, but like I think it was because there was a couple male colleagues that she had that, they weren't the greatest. And I think one of them almost, it was really bad. It was like, I think he left in a very negative way where it almost kind of got into a domestic alteration. So after that experience, she didn't want to be put in a situation where she would be like harmed or have her authority challenged as a manager. But yeah.
Wow, interesting.
I like my cousin also shared like a story with me, which happened like in her workplace. So like they wanted a position for the manager as well, and everything went well with the interviewee. Like he was qualified, education level, like skills, experience, everything was done all right. And so what they did, like one of the executives, so he said, let's just join for a dinner before we, to discuss some things before we open you for the job. So he was like, okay. Then they went for the dinner. Like they discussed some personal things, like his past experience, everything. And he just asked him like, so do you have a like family? He was a African American interview. So he just asked him like interviewer that, do you have like a family? So he was like, yeah, like I just got married. So and then after next day he got the email that, sorry, we cannot really, you are not a proper fit in our company, and they just laid out that your experience is not enough, but which was not the point. So he thought that maybe he is like African American, that he's been not discriminated against his race. But the fact was that the executive had the bias that the people who are at the manager level, if they have their families, so they are devoted towards them more. So if even like if we have them on call on duty, they will not come because of his past experiences, and he will not be engaging in work as more as he would be like, okay, if I need a holiday, I do need to spend more time with my family. So that was the biases that he created. So I don't think that we should like, because someone is married or like any other reason, we should create just a bias based on our past experience, because many people have the experience and skills which are exceptional in their way, and we cannot just ignore them.
I agree with you. Um, if I could share, there was actually something similar that I saw online, I think, and it was this guy who he had paid time off, and he was speaking with his boss, his manager, and he was just telling her that like why he took the paid time off. He found out that his girlfriend was pregnant, and there was like a lot of doctors visits that he had to go to. And then by the time that he came, and this was unrelated, that she was just checking up on him. And then when he came back from his paid time off, um, they had a meeting with him and someone from HR saying that they had terminated his position and he was no longer needed at the company because the position is no longer required by the company. They used a lot of HR talk to basically say that, you know, we're gonna do some offboarding now to help you offboard because, you know, unfortunately this position is no longer needed for our organization and it's no longer feasible. And this was never mentioned until after he found out that, like, after he informed his boss that, you know, that his girlfriend is pregnant. So she probably thought that, oh, he is probably gonna, because men do get the opportunity to take maternity leave as well. So she
Yeah.
probably didn't want to either pay for maternity leave or pay for extra pay time off or whatever the scenario may be. But it was really, really bad. And I was just like, wow, like, even if like women are used to feeling that, but like seeing that happen to a man as well was like really wide opening. It was like crazy that like, and it was, the boss was a woman too who did that. So I was like so surprised. So I guess like it doesn't really matter on gender. It could also be based on like people who are maybe biased against, like as you said, it could be family bias, as like them spending too much time with their family and not having enough time with work. But it's on the organization to have that healthy work-life balance for their employee, for them to be able to work properly.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's why it's so hard to like in interviews to make sure you're not saying anything personal because it's so scary at how much they can judge you based off of small things. I think that yeah, looking at a resume and seeing the gender that could cause bias, looking at their name could cause bias because it often gives away their ethnicity. Looking at what year they graduated often gives away their person's age, which could create bias. Maybe they're wearing like a sports merch that you didn't like during an interview. So even like small things like that can cause bias and make you not like that person. Or even psychological phenomenons that's like the halo effect when the person's more attractive. So you think they're smarter, more fit for the position rather than another person. So all of those things could create a lot of bias. And if you're in a HR position, when you're in like in charge of the hiring and recruitment process, it's so important to separate yourself from these situations and recognize your own personal biases. So now that we know how easy it is to, you know, for personal biases to get in the way of hiring someone, what do you guys think are possible solutions to prevent these biases from occurring?
I think not actually seeing the name maybe on a resume until you actually have chosen the person that you want to go with and then conduct an interview with. And I think like the first interview should probably be a phone call interview. So then therefore you don't actually have the ability to see them in person. Yes, you're gonna probably know right away whether you're speaking to like speaking to what kind of gender, because mainly it's kind of a giveaway with the voice. But at the same time, I think, you know, having those two options in place and then having a really rigorous step on like, okay, what questions can or cannot be asked. I don't think you should ask anything personal to them. I do think, you know, for example, if the individual is pregnant and they're looking to work in a new place, then yes, they should be honest about that with their employer, because if they do want like maternity leave or whatever benefits, then they have to be honest with their employer about that. But at the same time, it shouldn't be held against them either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think like not only the HR department should be based on the interviews evaluation of the interview, but also like after the like suppose he has rejected on the basis of bias, they should have like the clear reasoning as to the interview and also to the interview that like why do you felt you got rejected? Do you think that the interview happened according to you? Were you comfortable with that? All these questions should be addressed, and even maybe a monthly based surveys on how the interviews are conducted or how like the organizations can improve them, indulge more diversity, create like more openness and questions which can address the proper direct like towards the job roles, responsibilities, values, not based on the other biases.
I would agree as well with what both Mandy and Nyamat said. I think personally, interview processes should always be more than one person. And that's what happens with my work as well. Like not only am I like me and my manager, like he's a male, I'm a female, and then like yes, we're both like people that are like minorities, but like that I just feel like would help reduce biases because maybe like not for us but like maybe for a different like hiring managers, like if one manager kind of had a little bit more like biases due to like personal experience, like the other manager would like help balance that out. Or we've definitely had like in our own hiring process where one person wanted to hire someone else and one person wanted to hire somebody else, and then we had our own reasons. And um I wouldn't say that there were any like biases, but it just shows like sometimes multiple perspectives like is really beneficial.
Yeah, you guys all pretty much said everything that I had like a list on. So, yeah, nameless resumes, blind interviews. I know for like a lot of government positions, I can't remember if it was the States and Canada, but they now like for a lot of positions require no names on resumes, like barely any information other than like what is relevant to the position. And even in the interviews, I think it's um you when you're talking to them, you're not actually talking to them, like you have like someone in between, so you don't actually know anything about the person, like you can't hear if they have an accent or what gender they are, which I thought was really interesting. But what do you guys think about using AI to help prevent these problems, and what issues come along with that, such as sites with like Indeed and everything? Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Like, you probably are because you guys are managers.
Yeah.
They scan candidates for you a lot of the time, or you can set it up like that. So I wanted to know if you guys like agree with that, or if there's any issues that come along with that.
I think one thing with AI that everybody is probably aware of is like it takes away like the people, like personality, like emotional component.
Mhm.
And that's actually a pretty like kind of important factor depending on like what job you're hiring for. Like some jobs require people to have like more of like a like in any sales position you kind of have to like be confident and like be like kind of like well spoken. And so um if let's just say you have somebody and you're like interviewing for them and you don't know like their name and you don't know all these things, but you're using AI to like screen if they're like a good candidate, like you can't really screen how confident someone is, and you can't really screen how like well spoken or what kind of like energy they bring, what kind of attitude they have, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot.
I do think like AI does take away the ability to have like those first impressions. And I'm not talking about like how you see someone, but it's also like how someone prepares for an interview. It takes away that impression. Like, are you like, I don't know if this is biased, but like you, if you're working for like a specific position, you show up in an interview in clothes that are not like for an interview, like sweats or something like that, instead of like, you know, dress pants or something, then that shows that you don't really have the initiative. And there's also like a lot of people that do lie on their resumes. So when you do have the ability to do like proper face-to-face interviews, then you can kind of gain like kind of gauge whether their level of knowledge that they're saying that they have is actually there. Especially like my field, that's like a little bit more practical, like within accounting, like they're going to ask you specific questions about accounting, or like at least some information, and just to see whether you do know what you're talking about and you do have an idea of it, or like if you do claim to have a certain amount of work experience and you know, for a specific company before, or a specific place before, then they can also kind of gauge whether or not the information you're telling them is true by speaking to either individuals that have worked at those companies, and then, you know, following up with that, because there's so many people that would actually have their friends' information on file instead of like individuals that worked at the company, like their prior managers, to make themselves seem better. Because that actually happened, I think, in like one interview that I heard of before, that they actually lied on their resume. And I don't know how AI would pick that up.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think like AI is like creating, innovative ideas to select candidates, and maybe in future it can get better. But what happens is that through AI, when the company generates the responsibilities and duties required, like Mandy said, sometimes people just lie and put the keywords, key points, which they actually don't have. So they usually get to know about them in the face-to-face interview process. But I think the first step which the company tries to just get those points or the qualifications, it's great way, because you cannot just call every individual who apply for the job on the job. It requires a lot of money, effort, resources, and it can be a waste of time, and even if the candidate is not appropriate. So the first initial step, it's the best way, I think. But yeah, if we talk about improving it, or just putting some criterias around it, or just checking it whether the person, call the person after the AI has generated that, okay, the key points, like the person has the key points in him, then I think it is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you guys a lot. It's actually interesting because when I was like doing the research for the podcast, I kind of went the opposite way. Like I wasn't even thinking about how they could lie on a resume, and how, it takes away the human aspect, which is like obviously a really big part. So I'm glad you guys brought that up, because when I was doing research, I've learned that the huge issue with these sites are like they skip a lot of good candidates if they don't perfectly match their assessment. Like say that you're in university, you have one class left, so you can't really say that you have a degree yet, you know what I mean, and you get skipped, those kind of things. But I also, when I was doing this research, I found something else that really shocking about AI and helping the hiring process, and that there's a lot of evidence coming out lately about how AI has major biases and will skip many potential candidates based on gender, race, age, and so on. What possible reasons do you guys think this happens? And they like check all the boxes. They like it's usually based on like gender and race and age that they skip.
So you're saying like these systems like Indeed skip over them, or like the actual employers skip over these people?
No, like the systems, like the AI systems, like Indeed or any other screening
I think
system.
that, sorry, I think that has something probably to do with like how they're programmed, because I can't really figure out any other reason why they would skip out on these people. Um, yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if you're programmed, maybe, yeah, I think there's maybe something wrong with their algorithm to be able to skip that, unless the company is specifically asking to skip those people, then it's on the company, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be an employee like lying and unethical practices and filtering it, but saying that they're not filtering it, and so everybody else on the team thinks that it's not filtering, but it really is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But is there even an option that allows you to filter it like that? Because
Yeah,
that
because
would be unethical too, and that wouldn't be right. Like, how can you filter it based on like age, gender, or like ethnicity, or any other sort? Like, that's insane. Like, how can you do that?
and
It
I
should
think it's also a legal action against the website only.
Yeah, no, I don't think it allows you to filter it like that. Like big corporations such as Walmart, Amazon, I can't remember another one. I think it was Costco. Like a lot of these big organizations, they spent so much time and money creating these systems, and now they're like having to throw them all out. And it's because the teams that are making these AI programs to help the hiring process are accidentally programming them to only hire people under certain demographics. And it's actually because people who are making them, because like the research shows that AI almost always favors like the white male. And it's because the teams that are making these programs are usually white males. So they're accidentally programming them to only find people like them. But like it really shows you why diversity on every team in an organization is really important, because I don't think these people are doing it on purpose, but it's crazy how small changes like that can like create such an effect on the whole organization.
Yeah.
I think we do have to have some responsibility with it. Like, you need to be somewhat aware about your subconscious, or being subliminal with like your bias, because I think that is like a conversation that individuals who are making these programs need to have with themselves before they actually make these programs. And like, as like a researcher, as like a person, you need to seek out these, like, there's a ethic code of conduct that I think like all type of researchers need to do before they even started, to make sure that they eliminate bias from whatever project that they're starting, because they do have to test it out to see if they do work, right, before they can actually implement it. So before they when they do test it out on like a certain amount of like a population of a certain number of people with different races and backgrounds, then how do you not see that happening? I think, like, yeah, maybe be accidental, but still, as like a researcher, you're ethically responsible for the bias that you have, and to make sure that bias does not affect the thing that you're trying to create.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. I don't know, I think it's crazy that, because it wasn't just like one instance, it was like a lot of big organizations are coming out and saying that this is like a huge problem with like most of the screening systems. And then they traced it back to, how they were programmed. And I think that these programmers obviously aren't trained enough to be aware of that, maybe. I don't know. But that's pretty much all I had. Did anyone else have anything to add before I end? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And I guess we'll see you guys next time with Nyamat.